All right, everyone, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone, to our webinar, Accelerate Your Enterprise IoT Deployments. Presenting today are Rigado's Kevin Tate and Steve Gorretta. Notes before we get into it. The first is that all participants are muted by default. During the webinar, if you have a question for our presenters, you can submit that by using the WebEx Q&A panel on the screen. We'll address your questions during a Q&A session when the presentation is over. Second, a recorded version of today's webinar will be available to watch on demand, and we'll let you know by email when that is ready. Presenter today is Kevin Tate, Chief Revenue Officer here at Rigado. With that, I'll pass it over to Kevin.
Thank you, Christy. Excited to be here and excited to have Steve with us today. Steve, you ready? You got the demo ready?
Let's do it. This will be fun.
All right, good deal. So we're going to dive in. A few things on the agenda today. First, quick spin on Rigado and our role in enterprise Bluetooth. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the star of today's show, Edge Connect, and give an overview of what led us to develop the Edge Connect platform and how it works. And then turn it over to Steve for a live demo of some Edge Connect data pipelines in action. We should have plenty of time at the end for some Q&A. So first, if you're not familiar with Rigado, we're an enterprise IoT platform specifically for commercial spaces. So we do a lot of work in areas like smart office and smart buildings, intelligent warehouse and logistics, and connected retail and hospitality. We've been at this for quite some time. The company started on IoT and specifically Bluetooth back in 2010. And today we have more than 100,000 gateways deployed around the world. Our platform is one that provides edge connectivity and computing for enterprise Bluetooth. So we'll talk about mostly our gateways today, but increasingly our gateways are bundled with sensors from our integrated device partners and presented as an edge data platform from sensor all the way up to your cloud endpoint. Partners are a huge part of how we deliver our solutions. So we have partners on the cloud platform side, the integrated technology side, a lot of systems integrator and solution provider partners, ultimately helping us deliver data all the way from device to cloud. And we're proud to work with innovators, particularly in areas around smart building, asset tracking, and sensing and monitoring. And a lot of the companies that rely on Rigado to deliver data to their enterprise applications span those. Just got a note. Someone's saying they're not hearing any audio. Did you?
Yeah.
Let's see.
If you're not hearing audio, and I just posted this in the chat, just please ensure that you click the phone logo at the bottom of the presentation to allow WebEx to pipe your audio through your laptop if that's what you're using.
Oh yeah, no, I had that when I logged on too. It didn't by default enable audio. All right, well we'll keep going and please let us know if that doesn't resolve it. So thanks for that note. So that's a bit about us. Let me talk more about enterprise Bluetooth and what we see in the market today. So there's two big drivers that we see creating the demand and momentum around enterprise Bluetooth. The first is Bluetooth is largely emerging as the primary way of gathering data from these commercial spaces. So we're big fans of the Bluetooth SIG and the research they do to help us understand the proliferation of Bluetooth low energy in particular. Huge opportunity and growth, particularly within smart building and the types of logistics and retail environments that we're going into. So that's kind of the big pull. Everything that can be wireless is going that direction, and Bluetooth is largely becoming the conduit for that data from smart spaces. The rise of applications for everything from lighting to employee safety to building automation creates this need for a gateway infrastructure. Unlike, say, smart home or consumer, where you can rely on phones to provide that Bluetooth to cloud gateway, buildings don't have phones. And so the need for gateways to provide that connectivity, processing, and cloud delivery is a very real part of the Bluetooth proliferation into commercial spaces. That said, it doesn't really make sense to have a gateway for every single different application. So as as these applications have taken root, and as we've seen a proliferation of multiple use cases inside of smart environments, the need to have a shared infrastructure that can handle all those different use cases and communicate with all those different device and cloud endpoints becomes more and more pressing. So those are two big pulls that we see from the market in terms of how our technology fits. Rigado's platform, and again, that often includes both integrated sensors and our gateways that are doing the data collection, processing, and delivery, is typically going into these commercial spaces one of two ways. So a lot of our work is with solution providers who offer enterprise IoT applications. So these might be around asset tracking or cold chain. It might be around machine predictive maintenance or occupancy and space utilization. So those types of enterprise IoT applications ultimately consume the data that the Rigado platform is providing about that space. But the other area, and getting to that point around a shared infrastructure, is increasingly IoT edge infrastructure itself. So the owners and operators of these spaces or buildings are looking at building level questions around safety and security. How's the energy efficiency as the building management system integrated with energy monitoring and optimization? How do we know better what's going on inside the building? That becomes an important part of our infrastructure as well. And I think part of what we're hearing people say they're excited about Rigado's approach is we can use the same edge solution and gateways to serve both the enterprise IoT application needs and the IoT infrastructure needs. Generally what we're kind of pulled in to do. So now let me speak more specifically about what we've learned and what we've developed around enterprise Bluetooth. And a lot of that comes from some of the complexities that creating a secure and scalable device to cloud Bluetooth architecture engender. And so at a high level, this is about getting data coming from devices into a gateway and turning that data into events that can then inform a cloud application. And there's a few parts to that. There's the sort of BLE advertising connections part, or we're working with radios and firmware and making sure we have secure connections when they need them, and we can do effective advertising scanning when we're just collecting data. And then there's a lot that the gateway itself does to filter, process, and format that data. Ultimately, that often requires some specialized processing, and you're looking at devices that are being deployed in the or even tens of thousands. So the scalability of that infrastructure is important. And then there's the cloud integration. And a lot of times we're integrating to multiple cloud endpoints. And so maintaining security and key management and making sure that we can deliver data in a way that the cloud knows what to do with it is very important. But beyond the data pipeline, there's also this challenge of installing and managing the configuration of and monitoring and updating all the gateways and all the devices. And as I mentioned before, we have more than 100,000 gateways in the field today. Those connect somewhere between 6 and 7 million devices. And so maintaining the status and the health of all those devices over years' time becomes much more complicated than the Bluetooth data transport itself. So without Edge Connect, and today we're going to be talking about Edge Connect and things, but without it, these are some of the challenges that we've seen companies face over and over again. One is that while BLE is a super useful standard and one that we're certainly big fans of, it still does require some firmware and wireless design expertise to integrate effectively. And so we want to try to lower that bar as much as possible and allow groups with more web-based development expertise to leverage the Bluetooth Low Energy. The second is to translate BLE data, which these are not IP-enabled devices, right? Ultimately, they're speaking Bluetooth, not web. And so typically there's a custom edge application required to do that. And quite frankly, the writing and maintaining and evolving of that custom edge application is something that we've seen be a real expensive stumbling block for companies that want to leverage BLE in this way. So that's one of the big hurdles that we're removing with Edge Connect. And then once you have a custom edge application, a lot of times companies find they've now become the owner of a piece of software that they have to deploy and maintain and update, and that requires its own tools and teams. And that's often not the business that an enterprise application provider wanted to get in when they started down the Bluetooth low energy path. And all that adds up to time, cost, and risk for our systems integrator and solution provider partners. And ultimately, those partners are typically focused on the data. Right? They're most excited about how can I use the data I'm collecting and the devices that I'm controlling to make a meaningful impact on the business. And so we've realized that if we can remove those complexities and we can offer them a ready-to-run platform for enterprise Bluetooth, then we can dramatically improve the speed, security, and scalability of their enterprise Bluetooth efforts. That's what led us to develop Edge Connect. So with that, let me tell you a little bit about the latest update to our Edge as a Service platform, which is the Edge Connect. So Edge Connect platform allows companies to dramatically accelerate the speed of the enterprise IoT deployments. And let me show you a little bit about what it's doing under the hood. So within the gateway, Edge Connect is serving a few different functions and for different types and classes of devices, and then also through different parts of the enterprise Bluetooth lifecycle. So first, and perhaps the most obvious, is we're really, really good at scanning beacons. So BLE beacons or BLE advertising, a lot of companies start with BLE. It's a good way to capture data from lots of devices in a relatively low-touch way. I should mention from a hardware perspective, having designed and optimized BLE hardware since back in 2010, we have learned an awful lot about how to do that in an effective and efficient way. Recently, customers testing our gateways, and we observed more than 20,000 unique beacons being scanned by a single gateway device. And we also observed more than 500 feet line of sight range from a single gateway with internal antennas. So there's a lot that goes into doing really high performance scanning. And once that data comes in, the collection of those advertising packets, the filter and formatting of that data, and then connecting to the cloud is all stuff that we take care of with Edge Connect. And making sure that that data is delivered in a secure way through typically MQTT, but also could be AQMP or HTTP to whatever our partner's cloud endpoint is, or multiple endpoints, is a big part of kind of establishing the baseline data pipeline. That's just where it starts. And so back to where a lot of companies find they have to build custom apps today, we've created a set of libraries and tools within Edge Connect that handle much more rich connectivity and automation devices. So first, to what those devices are, we do have a set of pre-integrated device partners, and you can see more about those on our website. And those are basically partners that we've worked with before and integrated with our Edge Connect BLE profiles so that we can do things like provision new devices for installation. We can initiate connection requests through beacon advertisements and then connect to those devices securely for stored data delivery. You know, say something that's been on a truck for a while and then it comes into contact with the gateway and says it's ready to deliver its data payload. We can trigger actions and controls on those devices. So turn the machine off before it tears itself up, or let's turn on all the lights or activate all the monitors. And then, of course, affecting changes and updates to those devices. So the controls changes and updates part ends up being an important aspect of managing a very large set of deployed devices. And then adding custom devices, which is often the case with a partner who is building their own monitoring device or developing their own asset tag or integrating Bluetooth into equipment. That's something that Edge Connect now allows us to do with just some configuration. So we no longer have to develop or have our customers develop custom code. We have a way to to work with custom gap profiles within configurable Edge Connect profiles. Ultimately, that configurable connection allows us to then monitor, update, and message to those devices. So from a cloud enterprise app standpoint, that opens up the world of actions, controls, and automation. So you get two-way communication with all those devices back to your enterprise cloud. Very important for building real-time data networks, but also real-time control. And to manage all that, we've integrated Edge Connect with our cloud-based management tools, Edge Direct. So if you're familiar with Rigado's Edge as a Service platform, Edge Direct is the set of cloud-based tools and APIs that handle the device provisioning, the remote monitoring of all the devices in the field, updating the configuration of devices, and of course, applying security patches to both the gateways and the end devices. And ultimately, especially the provisioning and monitoring are things that our customers and partners often want visibility into from their cloud platforms as well. So we have a management API that allows Edge Direct to coordinate with their cloud platforms and keep that in sync. So ultimately, this is the platform that Edge Connect provides. And it gets particularly interesting when you think about not just doing things with small numbers of devices. You know, I need to add the MAC address of, say, 3 devices that I want to track, but rather I'm installing 100 gateways and 1,000 devices, and I need them to all act and behave as a device set for a given configuration. And being able to manage those configuration sets and turn on and change characteristics of devices at scale is the type of a large-scale management that we've built into Edge Connect. Also, managing very large sets of devices means that you can't rely on persistent connectivity or known states. For example, let's say you want to change how often your occupancy sensors are reporting room status, and you're going to roll out that change to 10,000 deployed occupancy sensors. A few hundred that are being moved or are still in transit or are part of a floor that's being redone. So in Edge Connect, we built the capability for our gateway to queue those messages, store those future state configurations, and then deliver those and confirm update for those devices once they come back online. Those are all the types of things that we learned as we worked with the very large scale enterprise Bluetooth deployments, and then realized we needed to build into Edge Connect to create that sort of secure management at scale. That manifests itself as a bunch of different data pipelines and options. So I give some examples here, sort of what it looks like as things move through the data pipeline for temperature monitoring versus room occupancy versus employee badge tracking. The point being that all these are achievable through simple configuration and using the same platform, Edge Connect, again, with no custom code. And so this is really the foundation, if you will, that makes it possible to deliver on that promise from the first slide, having a common edge infrastructure in the form of the Rigado gateways that can talk to all kinds of different devices, including custom third-party devices, without requiring custom code, that can serve lots of endpoints securely, getting data where it needs to go for various business use cases, and ultimately provide an extensible infrastructure so that you don't have to worry about not being able to support additional devices or use cases 3, 5, 7 years down the road. So that's the long view. And then from a near-term perspective, what most of our clients really appreciate is the speed. Typically, the Edge Connect can be configured for devices and delivery to cloud endpoints in about an hour, which is a lot different than the weeks or months it often takes a company to write their custom Edge application. That's a lot about Edge Connect. Let's see it in action.
All right,
Steve?
So thanks, Kevin. Yeah, so we're going to do a quick demo of asset tracking in the context of a smart office application. And I think this will hopefully illustrate to you how Edge Connect and Bluetooth can really bring this to life and value from these physical spaces. So the setup that we have here, we've created in our own office here in Rigado in Portland, Oregon, a Bluetooth network. We've got asset tags, card tags, some sensors, and it's all flowing through gateways that we have on our premises here. And we're actually going to demonstrate two separate data pipelines. One going to Microsoft Azure through a Grafana dashboard, and that'll demonstrate kind of the real-time nature of the data coming in. And then a separate data pipeline, but flowing through that same infrastructure, is going to go to AWS and show our partners at Contact their asset tracking application and show how you can actually generate some business value from IoT in the enterprise. So to start, I've got actually here in the room, I'm going to flip over to my browser, and you'll notice first we've got some charts here, and they're updating every second. And I actually have in my hand here an asset, a sensor with a accelerometer, and as I move it around, you'll see that acceleration chart start to fluctuate, and it just kind of gives you an idea of how real time this is. Every second we're updating, it's moving around. I can also monitor temperature, pressure, humidity, battery life. You see the acceleration moving there. And the idea here is you're not going to sit here and stare at Grafana dashboards all day if you're monitoring and managing a commercial space, but this shows how real time this is and how scalable it is. If we do this for thousands and thousands of sensors, that can end up in being 5, 10, even 20 million events occurring every day. And that's coming through our gateways, through Edge Connect, but we're filtering and processing that in a way that makes it very manageable for the cloud applications to digest, manageable bandwidth use. And so it really shows how you can get both the real time and scalability that you need to deploy this into a real commercial space. Now that shows how the pipeline works. What I want to do though is illustrate how you can actually generate business value through a real application that an end user might use. So I'm going to flip over here to the Simon AI, and this is from our partners at Contact. This is a smart buildings application, and this is running live. So you're actually getting a live view of our Rigado office. You see we've created some ID badges that are Bluetooth enabled. We have some asset tags. You can see here, Kevin and I are in the Morrison conference room. There's me, Steve Gorretta. We've got some different things like copy machines, and all the different rooms are labeled there. And what this application does is allow you to see where those assets are, what they're doing, what the state of them is. And I'm going to take you through a few really valuable examples of how this data can be used. So first, I've got all my assets over here. We can poke in and say, okay, here's an employee, Steve Gorretta. Here's some notes about him. Here's the environment that he's in. Here's how he's been moving around throughout the day, what locations he's been in. You can even go back in time. Say at 8 o'clock this morning, I went to the lunchroom. I actually put the coffee on. And so you can get a sense of where people and things are moving around real time and historically. And that can apply both to people, but also to important assets. For instance, we might have an oscilloscope here that really belongs in the engineering lab. It's mostly going to be in the engineering lab, but it's a very important piece of equipment. And what's interesting about being able to take this data in and have it historically is that I can start to monitor and alert if something happens to that device that I want to know about. For instance, I could go in and create a notification. If that oscilloscope leaves the engineering lab, I want to dump a message into a Slack channel or put an email out that says the oscilloscope is on the move. So there's a lot of things that you can do application-wise with this data that will generate real value for the end user. Now, the other thing that we see, in addition to looking at individual entities, is the idea of going in and looking more globally at a facility. So, for instance, I can look at that map and look at a heat map. Now, a heat map is really interesting because it shows the flow of traffic, whether it's people or assets over time. And I'm going to go ahead and play it, and you can start to see how things shift around there. And what's really cool about this is that if you're managing an office or even a retail space or a warehouse for logistics, by being able to look at this over time, you can start to actually generate some trends and feed that into an analysis or even a predictive engine and say, okay, what does this mean to our business? Where's the right way to place things at certain times of day, certain days of the week? Where should our important pieces of equipment go that people are commonly using? So it's just a really good view into how that data that, again, is coming from all those sensors through that Edge Connect platform and into the cloud database can actually be exposed to an end user to generate real business value. There's a couple of other cool things here. Like you can look at dwell time, how long have people been spending time in certain rooms, where are the popular spots at different times of day, an entry log, an exit log. And I think what's neat about this is that you start to see how, you could replace the clipboard in a physical space where people are going around and marking down, okay, is this device where it should be at the prescribed time? That's just a laborious activity that can be taken care of by an application like this. The other thing is you start to see how all this data, it's analogous to what the web analytics companies were able to do for e-commerce. If you're in the retail space, we're essentially bringing that to the physical space, which nobody's really been able to do, and look at that accuracy and precision on every entity or every employee or asset that's moving around in that physical space. And that's really going to make it easier to optimize that space and come up with new applications to improve the experience. So this is one example of how you can really bring out some really interesting value, starting all the way with that Bluetooth network and the sensors and the gateway through Edge Connect into the cloud. And there's one other thing that I want to mention along this. So I'm going to flip back over to the slides here from the demo. We've talked about the edge infrastructure, the sensors and the gateways, and we've demonstrated how that integration into the cloud and with an application partner can create a really valuable experience for an end user. But there's one other thing Rigado does, which is deliver this as a service. So it's even easier to take in the hardware, the Edge Connect pipeline, and get ongoing software updates and technical support as a service from Rigado tied into those cloud integrations, which allows you to deploy faster and scale even more reliably. And that applies if you're building your own solution using Rigado technology, or if you're a service provider and you're looking for a solution and you want to get to market faster with something that is essentially ready to go. And so we actually have on our recently updated website a place where you can go and look for both. You can see all the information about the Rigado products, and you can also go and look at those different partners we've worked with and what solutions might be applicable to the vertical market that you're looking at if you want to go out with something that is, almost pre-kitted. Either way, they're both on our website, and we invite you to come take a look at it at rigado.com. You can always reach out to us by email. And at this time, we're going to open it up because I think we have some really good questions coming in. I'm going to hand it back to Christy.
Great. Thanks a lot, Kevin and Steve. So we're going to start answering questions now. Please do feel free, if you have questions that you're thinking of still, to submit them via the WebEx Q&A panel. So let's see, our first question is a two-parter. Are there limitations to what BLE sensors and beacons you can connect to? And then how does Bluetooth compare to 5G, Wi-Fi 6, and other wireless technologies for IoT use cases?
That's two big ones. Good questions. So to the first part, there are no limitations to what BLE sensors and beacons we can connect to. Broadly speaking, it's easy and standard, again, thanks to Bluetooth SIG, to collect BLE beacon advertisements, and that's often where companies start. But we've also dramatically simplified the complexity connecting to custom devices through custom GATT profiles. So long story short, if you have a custom device or sensor, whether a sensor you're manufacturing or a device you're building that will incorporate BLE, we can connect to it. And we can also enable services that you may have built around that device for things like firmware updating or health monitoring. Second part, how does Bluetooth compare to those other technologies? Well, that's a hot topic right now, as obviously, Bluetooth 5 has evolved considerably in recent years. Now 5G and Wi-Fi 6 have evolved considerably. I would say, broadly speaking, we see Bluetooth as the best, most cost-effective, and most flexible way to get data out of large numbers of low-cost sensors and devices. So if you're indoors and you've got to monitor a bunch of desks or a bunch of fridges or track a bunch of equipment, Bluetooth has some real advantages in terms of the technology versus, say, 5G or Wi-Fi. Both those have their use cases, and certainly folks are very interested in things like private 5G networks for large indoor spaces, and Wi-Fi 6 brings some new capabilities around low power devices. But we're still seeing Bluetooth as a leader for indoor data sensor network.
Thank you. Second question.
That's the one that came in there. We had a good question about the demo set.
Yeah, so we just got one.
Yeah.
How many gateways were used in the office demo?
Yeah, so we typically we cover our office, 3 or 4 gateways will do the trick in a space like ours. We get, as Kevin mentioned earlier, we have really good coverage, and you can cover quite a few square feet with just a couple. We actually added some. I think we've got maybe 8 or 10 running now because we decided to put one in each of the major spaces, which I showed on the map, just to get super high precision tracking of each of the assets. So, depending on the application you're going for, if you want big coverage, you can cover an entire warehouse with 10 gateways, but you could also choose to, like I said, get really specific and have that same number of gateways for each individual space in an office. And some of it comes down to the type of material, the construction, and the use case you have. And this is where our solutions team can really provide a lot of value, because we've done so many different types of physical spaces that we can work with customers to find what is the optimal number to have there to get the right kind of coverage, but also not really oversubscribe in terms of how much build out you have to do.
Thank you.
Another good one coming up.
Does Rigado use cellular or Wi-Fi to transmit data to the IoT cloud platform?
We do. Yeah, we didn't talk much about internet backhaul today. So we offer both cellular and Wi-Fi. The cellular is LTE Cat 1. We have that for the US and international options. I should say that most of our installations actually use Ethernet. So we have Ethernet and PoE available, and for office buildings or warehouses in particular, a lot of times companies will just do a PoE drop, so they have a single cable to each gateway. That said, cellular ends up being a really nice option for places where that kind of installation isn't practical, or frankly, for pilot installations, where people want to put something in and try it out and learn from it. The combination of cellular connectivity on the gateway with the Edge Connect configurability often means that we can send somebody gateways, sensors, and a cellular enablement, so that when they plug it in, it will work instantly. And that's a really nice way to get a pilot running the same week.
What determines how frequently sensors and tags report data, and for how long is the collected data saved?
So the first part of that, it really depends on the application. The demonstration we did here and what we see a lot of people doing is, every second or multiple times a second. But that's configurable, and it's something that can be tuned. So you can start with something that has very high resolution, but then back it off over time, depending on what you see fit. And that's something that we can use that Edge Direct platform to remotely configure across the entire space. So it really depends. It depends on the application, how frequently you need the data, and how rich it needs to be. How long the collected data is saved. There's an interesting nuance to this question, because we don't actually hold the data. When we showed that going into the cloud to Azure AWS, that is a data pipeline that goes to you being the service provider or customer, to your cloud. So it's really up to you how long you want to save that, how much storage you're paying for, how much resolution you want to have going back in time. But it's really important for us to point out that Rigado doesn't store, save, or view that data. It's, we are here to create an edge data infrastructure and a pipeline so that you can go and create the value with that. So it's really up to, how long do you need that data and what do you want to do with it? And that's something that is pretty easy to determine with any of those cloud providers that we showed.
I should add for the gateways themselves, they come with 8 gigs of storage. So if you want to do store and forwarding, or if you want to one of our partners tracks vaccines, and Onset has a very evolved system for storing vaccine information to be delivered for CDC compliance. Our gateways can store up to 8 gigs of that and then deliver it when they come back in on the network. So,
are there plans for the gateway to support LPWAN in the future?
LPWAN, so low power long range networks like Sigfox and LoRa come up a lot. We don't have any specific plans to add those to the current gateway. There's kind of already a lot in there between the Bluetooth, Thread, Zigbee, Wi-Fi, Cellular, but we have supported that with some add-ons, effectively using the USB port to add on a radio. So we've accommodated those in the past. We'll see if we end up building that into the gateway itself.
Does Rigado have its own IoT portal to service its devices?
So we briefly mentioned Edge Direct earlier. That's a product that we have that is part of that managed service that you can use to manage the gateway, monitor the health of it. We provide ongoing, updates, security updates if they're necessary. So yeah, that's something that we provide, and that's really laid out nicely on our website. We didn't choose to do a demonstration of that today, but we've made some really big updates, and that was actually part of our announcement. So there's some good stuff there in Edge Direct, and we'll be doing future episodes where we go deeper into how that does it. But yes, that's something that we provide as part of our Edge as a Service platform.
So I think we have time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions here. Is there a limit to the number of beacons that the Rigado Gateway can receive data from?
Oh, no. From a beacon perspective, as I mentioned earlier, we spent a lot of time and effort optimizing our beacon collection capabilities. And so we've seen customers collect data from 4,000, 5,000, even up to 20,000 beacons concurrently from or collecting data at the same time from a single device. Now, beaconing is effectively a sort of a one-way send and receive communication. When we're doing actual connections or bonded connections with devices, that's a much heavier type of connection. And so usually that's more like 20 connections per gateway. And that might be for something like a room occupancy sensor when it's requested a data connection for firmware update, that sort of thing. So one of the things we've learned to do that really takes advantage of the low power beaconing or low power requirements of beaconing, but also the richer device connectivity, is to have devices in beacon mode, then use an advertisement to request a direct connection, initiate that connection to either get data or do an update or a configuration change, and then flip them back into beaconing mode. So Edge Connect takes care of all that.
I think that kind of touches on that question that just came in, which is how do we handle devices at once? For the most part, it's just going to pick up beacons that are active in that area, and that's how it can really scale without having to go in and manually configure each for specialized devices where you want to have that kind of connection.
Yeah, and it brings up a really good point, actually. I glossed over this a little bit in the data pipeline part, but when you're scanning thousands of beacons and processing thousands of advertisements, it becomes really important to figure out which ones you care about, and for the ones you care about, what are you going to do with that data, right? You might be getting advertisements at the same time from a set of temperature sensors, a set of asset tags, obviously Steve and where he's gone and whether or not he's made the coffee. And so being able to recognize what's what and being able to do that not just through the MAC IDs, but also based on service profiles and metadata about those devices, and then routing those to the right data pipeline and even the right cloud endpoint. That ends up being something that's fairly complicated, and it makes up sort of a rules engine. And that's also something we've built into Edge Connect, so that companies don't have to basically figure out that logic every time for every device. They can apply rule sets and tags and filtering to make sure the right data goes through the right process and to the right endpoint.
So I think that's it for the questions. We're at 9:45. So thanks everyone for attending today's webinar. After leaving today, if you have any questions, you can reach us by email at contact@rigado.com or through the contact form on our website at rigado.com. On behalf of the Rigado team, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Christy.
Thanks, everyone.